No.
Hello.
Hello, Akash. Hello, Luis. Hello, Bin Bin.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back, Bin Bin.
Oh, thank you.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. While we wait, are there any items people want to add to the agenda today?
Looks like we have low quorum today.
Yeah. Sometimes others join a little bit late, but I think we can maybe get started with the PRs.
Yep.
Cool. I'll bring up the list. So starting from the bottom, on the CRD status, I have provided like a mock status response to Xinghe for review. So I'll just bring it up right now, so that I want people to look at it, have a quick look and see if you have any feedback. So the plan is we're adding the success Boolean to the overall status, along with the error messages and the time. On top of that, we're adding the properties of the cached messages. So in this example, the spec of the store certificate store provider contains an array of certificates with their name and version. And version is optional. If it's empty, then the certificate provider will fetch the latest version of the certificate. In the status of the certificate, we will see the last refresh time and the version of the confirmed version of the fetched certificate. So I'm not in the test code, I've added the certificate as an array, but when I do like a kubectl CTL describe, like they kind of just appear in a list. So yeah, I still have to play with that, but any feedback on the format of the certificate properties?
I guess one simple thing is there a way to kind of chunk the cert name, the block for one cert from the next cert, kind of like all in one. So like a bullet point or something. I don't know if the describe command allows you to format that way, but
Can you elaborate, Akash? So right now so these are not in chunks, right? Like it looks like one big.
exactly, yeah. So
Yeah.
is there a way like to either add like a dashed line between them or make them a
Yeah.
bulleted list or something like that? I'm curious if there's a way.
Yeah, I'll look into
Okay.
that. So when these objects are added to the map, this is the key,
Mhm.
and I guess this is an array. So this, what I'm highlighting right now, the cert name, the time, the version, is a map from string to string. And then certificate maps to an array of map from string to string.
Okay, so
But when you describe it, it comes out as a big chunk without any breaks, right? But
Got
yes,
it.
I will look into how to have like a similar presentation to the array object in the spec. That's the
Yes.
feedback, right?
Yeah, if that's possible. I'm just thinking if someone has like a bunch of certs configured, like it's just gonna be one big glob of text. They're
Yeah.
gonna have to either like do like a search on that, like pipe it through another command or something. So
Yeah.
I guess to add to that, so is there a scenario where you can have like hundreds of these certificates?
Yeah, we don't limit how many you can put in the CRD. So yeah, there is no limit.
So I'm thinking like if you run into a scenario where you have like hundreds of these, like with the payload, what would the payload look like, and whether like what's the use the customer is gonna have for showing all this info? Are they gonna be in a need to sort of do a search, or potentially do like can we provide like a trim version? Like what's the scenarios that customers would want to have this info for?
This is, yeah, Xinghe said that this is useful when he see an error in the status. So like if you see an error, that means the last operation have failed, but you're still interested to see what are the already cached. So if you do a verify, since on failure, we don't override the existing entry, what is the already cached verification certificate?
I see.
But when I spoke to Anish, so his experience with a CSI driver is these arrays tend to be pretty small.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, I'm wondering if there's a way to, like a potential malicious hacker could potentially like inject. Well, I guess no, I guess there's no. This would all be like basically pointing to a customer's certificate store. So
Yeah, at the moment, the length of this certificates array would be exactly the same as the
right.
whichever the user have input the certificate array, since we don't currently support like the end history version feature. So it's quite controlled.
I see. Okay. Okay. So it's this is gonna be very controllable by the customer. Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't received feedback from Xinghe, so I'll probably follow up with him later to confirm the experience.
Gotcha. And then we're not there. The logs, or this is not surfacing any potential sensitive customer. Okay. Looks okay.
Thanks. Yeah, I was hoping Xinghe could join today. Let me. Yeah, I just double checked. There's no one in the waiting room to be admitted. Yeah. So who's on the call? Hello, Toddy.
Hey, Susan.
Okay.
Actually, it's a holiday in China, so I don't think Xinghe will join.
Oh, that's right. Yes. It's Tombstone Sweeping Day.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay,
It's a holiday.
got it. Thank you
Have
for
fun.
joining, Bin Bin. Wait, are you taking the day off later?
No, I just want to catch up on Ratify, so I will join the meeting today.
Okay. So next PR, the metric support, Akash.
Yep. So thanks, Susan, for the couple rounds of review. Very helpful. So I've gone through, I think, most of your second review. Still have a few things to follow up on, kind of the default on versus default off behavior, both in the chart and the server. So still taking a look at that. But apart from that, yeah, Bin, if you want, if you have some time, and please do take the day off if you can. No rush on this. If you want to take a look at it as well, I'd appreciate your input on it too. And I can also set up some time, maybe tomorrow or something, to walk you through the PR. It's seems like a lot of changes, but actually the logic is quite limited to changes in a few files. So and then this is the first in a series of PRs that will light up extra metrics after this. So, and Susan, should I do a small demo now, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
My
sure.
mouse is right on the make host button. So
okay, sounds
here
good.
you go.
I'll give a small little demo of what the metrics look like in a cluster and how your cluster would be configured, as well as what it would look like if you set up Grafana with Prometheus and use the built-in Grafana Ratify dashboard that we built. So let me just share my screen for that. 1 second. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so last week we kind of went over the design for metrics, so I'm gonna skip over that and just talk about the relevant portions for the demo. So for those, small recap, so Ratify doesn't have any metric support, so the effort so far has been to set up both the infrastructure for supporting metrics and different types of metrics, as well as a common infrastructure for supporting different types of metrics ingesters. So the first type that we're going to be relying on heavily is Prometheus, and that's the most popular one to be running inside Kubernetes projects. So in this setup, so let me just walk you through it. So I have Ratify running already installed on this cluster. So you can see the Ratify pod right here. I have Gatekeeper installed on this cluster too. And I have a few extra things that are installed in order to get Prometheus to work. So the first is that I've created an extra namespace called monitoring, and all of the monitoring related resources are all housed in this namespace. So the default Prometheus community Helm chart that we're using comes with a lot of pre-built controllers, as well as some alert monitors. And a lot of this is glossed over in this demo. We won't be taking advantage of it, but any customer who comes in would likely be using something similar to this. And so in our case, we're really concerned with the Prometheus scraping controller, and that's actually the controller that's responsible for communicating with Ratify pod, grabbing the metrics from the metrics endpoint from the metrics server that we set up in the Ratify application, and then taking those metrics and then packaging them up and then exporting them out to this controller here, which is the Prometheus Grafana controller. And then this pod is connected, backed by a load balancer service in the cluster. So let me show you that. So we have lots of different services, but one of them is this Prometheus Grafana service and exposed on an external IP. So this allows you to actually go into your browser and, sorry, 1 second. and you should be able to see the actual dashboard. So let me just go from the beginning. Let me sign out. So when you actually go to the IP that's exposed, the external IP there that we saw, it prompts you to log in. So this is set to basic credentials that are baked into the standard Helm chart, but you can customize it. And then from there, we've actually preloaded a Ratify specific dashboard for Grafana. And the way you can do that is once you have Prometheus and the Prometheus Grafana controller installed on the cluster, you can create an extra configuration map in the cluster. So you apply that, and it's this one down here. And it just is a large JSON format of the different Ratify dashboard and graphs that we're providing to the user. And then using that, you can add the config map, and then the Grafana Prometheus controller picks up that you have added a new config map, and it automatically adds it as a new dashboard collection that will show up here. So we will browse our dashboards that are configured. So there are lots of built-in dashboards and different metrics that are emitted for the core Kubernetes, such as the API server, some of the compute resource stuff, DNS. But we're concerned with the, sorry, 1 second, why it's not showing up. Sorry, 1 second, I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 second. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is kind of the first iteration of the dashboard. Again, this will kind of change as we add more metrics, and it covers the basic scenarios. So starting with the top left, we have this count of the number of verifier operations that are happening over an interval that you've set. So in our case, the interval is going to be about a minute. And it tells you from the Ratify execution point of view, it's every time one of your plugin or built-in verifiers you've set up is actually run and returns a result. So in our case, the basic one will have Notary v2 verifier. That verifier itself, every time that is run and outputs a result, whether that be an error result, a success, or a failure, and then actually the verifier type, it shows up as data points here. So right now in the background, I've got a small deployment running with about 10 pods and some images with multiple signatures on each one of them. So because we have audit set up for Gatekeeper, you're seeing this continuous amount of verifier operations. Similarly,
sorry, Akash, I am having trouble following the legend on that first graph. So the green is error, false, success, true, verifier, Notary v2. So it's just why is it showing the same?
Yes, yeah. So this is not complete yet, but there's some weird
I see.
to it because the latest data point you see, I don't know if you can see it, it's green. So
right.
for some reason Prometheus is rendering that as a different thing. So I'll fix that. So this is gonna go away. It'll just be one legend, and I'll actually set it up so that it's cleaner rather than looking at this attribute map. We'll make it a nice header for each one of these.
Got it. So you would show still like one would be the success true and the other one would be like success false for Notary v2.
Yes, yeah. And then potentially if there was an error that was returned from it.
I see. Got it. Okay.
And in the future, if we can actually pop these out into separate individual graphs, depending on if you want to see the success versus the failure graph to be separate completely. Reason I avoided doing that now is because you're going to end up with a bunch of, at least in the basic scenarios, probably empty graphs, and then you'll be scrolling for a while. So for now, I've just kept it all as one, and then it's just dimensioned by different attributes if you wanted to see that. But we can always change it later on according to that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep. So the second panel is the rate requests per second on the verification handler. So when Ratify gets a request from gatekeepers, the external data provider, this gives us an estimate of how many requests per second we're getting to validate resources. And this is useful to understand kind of how many resources are being validated in the cluster, also to understand if there's bursts of validation like deployments or other workload resources, how Ratify is getting pounded by that. So it's that one. This one is, these two are essentially the same. One is for the mutation handler, one is for the verification handler, and each one gives us a sense of what the latency to process the entire external data request for Ratify for a single request is, whether that be on the mutation side or on the verification side. So when Gatekeeper makes a request out to us to verify, we could be one subject, we could have multiple subjects, we could have multiple signatures, multiple verifiers. So how long is that entire round trip take before we respond? And the metric that's emitted is actually a histogram, so we can get the P95 request latency from that. So both of these are similar. These two are more at the Ratify pod, the pod level metrics. So this is the memory usage. This is particularly important if we want to track how many resources we have cached on cluster, so how many signatures and how big our logs are, and if they're growing way out of control, if we're going to reach that limit of 512 megabytes, which we've currently set up as the default ceiling for that. And then the second one is the CPU usage. So what is the request that we've put in for the CPU? What is the limit that we can request more on? And then what is the current baseline usage for Ratify? And as you can see, it's quite low as the audit is going on, which is a good sign. And then finally is the error count, and this one will only populate once you have errors that are returned from the actual server handler. So if there's like a timeout error, that would pop up here, and that has more information that we could add, like the type of error. But for now, all it does is just count if there are any errors at the handler level. And we will definitely improve on our error reporting. There were some good ideas last week about maybe adding some correlation IDs so that we can correlate between a request coming from Gatekeeper and a request landing and Ratify, both on the mutation and the verification side. But this kind of at least lays the groundwork for that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So
it'll be interesting, Akash, if there's ways to monitor like some of these with some of the, like if there were scale experiments being done, like how do these graphs flow as like, you know, as the number of nodes or pods in the cluster increases. So yeah, the memory one might be interesting to keep an eye on.
yes, exactly. Yeah, that will definitely help when we do some of our load testing to see kind of where we're landing up.
Right.
This graph will be interesting. Also, the RPS might also be more interesting.
And the latency as well. No, yeah. This is very cool. Thanks for the work.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Akash. Any questions? Anyone else? Okay, Akash, I have one question on the edit graph experience. So I see there's like a little plus sign on like adding new diagrams, I assume. Would this write back to the JSON once you've edited?
Yeah, great question. So no, unfortunately, it does not. We can actually go to that. So when you hit save, you see how it just generates this and it says copy, because it detects that your source is not, it's coming from the config map. So you have to actually copy this, go into your config map definition, update that, and then reapply it for it to save properly, which is I guess this is the way. I'm not familiar with another way of doing this, but yeah, that's the current experience.
Got it. So if someone were to were to use Ratify, and if they want to add their own charts on top of what we already provide, they will, would they submit a PR, or would they just maybe edit it in their fork, and then they can just, how do they have a customized dashboard for their Ratify service?
Yeah, no, I think what customers would have to do is, so this whole experience of setting up Prometheus, actually installing Prometheus the way we've done it, I've done it here, and setting up the dashboards is a guidelines that we're going to provide. It's not something we should maintain. This is kind of like, if you don't have Prometheus on the cluster, this is how you do it, because Prometheus is very widespread. And if you're, chances are, if you're adding Ratify to an existing cluster, you've already set up some sort of metrics flow. So what you would do instead is we would point you to the actual dashboard content in our repo and say, hey, this is the dashboard, and you should grab it from there, fork it, or just download it and then add to it on your own. It's up to you to maintain your own dashboard. That was my opinion on this, because we're not responsible for enabling Prometheus on the cluster. We're not responsible for publishing any of these dashboards. This is how, if you wanted to use Ratify and see how the metrics are flowing, this is what we recommend, but not something we will manage for you. So.
Got it. So a customized dashboard will be version controlled on the customer's repository.
Yes. Yeah, that's the way I see it going happening. But if others feel differently, we can discuss that too.
Yeah, I think it sounds very reasonable, and we'll look forward to who's going to pick it up first. But this is definitely good to see as like a basic out-of-the-box experience to visualize the performance. This is great.
Yep.
Since Akash, if you're already presenting, do you mind just going to the PR list?
Sure, let me just go. Okay.
Yeah, do you know if there's any status update on this PR?
No, I reached out to Jimmy earlier this week asking him, because he had mentioned he wanted this in for RC3, but he's been kind of swamped with some personal stuff and stuff at work. So
yeah, I also sent him a message. I told him if he needed maybe a day or an extra day or two, we could delay, but he hasn't replied back in Slack.
Yeah, so for RC3, should we continue following up with him to see if he's still trying to make RC3, or if he's okay waiting for RC4? Or maybe we could just provide a date, like maybe we're going to cut the release next week or early next week.
So let's give Jimmy maybe a day or two to reply, and if not, let's just go back then to the original plan. I will also ping Vani, who's also in Amazon. She's been asking about the date, so maybe she has a way to touch base with Jimmy as well.
Got it. But they're not on the same project. Like, would Vani be waiting on this feature?
Yeah, I don't know. She asked specifically for when the plan is, so I still will need to sort of check with her. They're both in Amazon, so maybe they have a way for. I'm not entirely sure if they're in the same project or not, but
yeah,
I know they know each other. So.
Yeah, sounds good. So for my PR, the CRD PR, my plan is I'll follow up with, sorry, Binbin just said Xinghe is off today. I think I would probably need to check with Xinghe And then I'm still working on more testing, local testing and like integration test. So I'll probably need till Friday for to be in a ready for review status.
I see. So we do need a day or two extra for this.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's make it then a plan. If we have already 2 features that would need some more time, Van is the only person who's been asking for a date, so I'm gonna give her a sort of heads up. Hey, is it okay to push this?
Maybe too early next week. I can.
Right. Yeah. So maybe for Tuesday next week. Would that give you enough time?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, all the code is pretty much there, but I just need to do more end-to-end testing.
Okay. Yeah, let me post a message then on Slack and start a thread there.
Sounds great. Thank you. Oh, and another thing to review later is we should not share the screen for the security alert, but I noticed, Akash, that see how it says 33 under security? We should also, yeah, don't click it.
Yep, yeah.
We should also review if there's any high priority items to be addressed for RC3, if any of the security threats are high priority enough to be fixed.
Yeah, this one needs to go in today. So,
Okay.
yeah. But yes, I agree. I think so. Once I guess the exciting thing is that the OSSF upstream finally fixed a bug on their end. So now we finally get the green check marks showing up, which is good. And as a result of that, it finally uploaded a lot of those scanning results that were failing before. And I think that's also why this has kind of grown from previous point. So
yeah, let's review that offline.
Yep.
Cool. I think the next item on the agenda is to discuss the process around dependencies. So Akash, I know you fixed a license checker test failure this week.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the problem a little bit?
Sure. So earlier this week, we had all of our end-to-end tests suddenly start failing, even though we hadn't actually pushed any changes. And this is not the first time this has happened. I think this has happened before, but it turns out that one of our dependencies during our end-to-end tests, where we install a bunch of different tools for generating the artifacts, had pushed an update. And because of that update, the output for the acceptable licenses had changed compared to the ones that we had set up in our configurations. And as a result, the license checker verifier was failing. So different issues at hand here. So number one is that we weren't actually pinning the version of this dependency to a specific version. We were just grabbing the latest. So that's one of them. And the remediation PR, which was sent out earlier this week, was to pin that specific version of the tool to be configurable based off of a environment variable. So now we pin the downloaded version to that environment variable. The other part is that the underlying image which we are generating the artifacts from. So for license checking, we were using a version of Alpine to actually generate the license checkers. And this version of Alpine was not pinned to a digest. So potentially when a new version of Alpine comes out and it adds some new files with some new headers, you would have a similar issue where it would be a mismatch in allowed headers, and then our end-to-end test would fail again. So as part of the other PR, I also switched it to be digest-based. So I think there might be other tools that we rely on that for creating these artifacts that are not pinned to a specific version. So we would need to go back and assess that. And then the second part that Susan and I were discussing was now that we have pinned them to a specific version, what is our plan to actually update the versions as on some sort of regular cadence? So Dependabot unfortunately doesn't seem to have the ability to point to these environment variables and update them as open PRs and update them, and then we can assess if tests fail as a result. So we'd need some sort of way of saying every month or every 2 months or something where we have to go into our makefile right here, and we would have to go through all of these different versions and see if there are updates to them. If there are other tools that would handle this, if people are aware of that, that'd be great. But as far as I understand, there isn't a great way of handling this.
I think one option is to just pin it to a version, and when people want a new version, we'll take a new version. Like, I think that's definitely an option. What do you think?
What's the process that Notary follows?
Yeah, Binbin, do you know?
I don't know how Notary handles this case.
Yeah, I think we should, if they already have a process for that, we should be consistent.
Sure, that's a good point. How they manage dependencies.
Right, like do they like you said, it could be that it's an on-demand thing, or it's maybe something that an audit that's done every X number of weeks.
Yeah. For me, like coming from a C# background, I think when you create a C# project, when you like include those NuGet packages, they always pin to a version in the project file. Is that true?
Might be. I'm not sure.
Actually, Notary, there is no make file in Notary, so because it's not a service.
Or
What about in their end-to-end test? Like, what would they?
right, or Gatekeeper as well. I mean, Gatekeeper can also be a model here. Yeah, I think this is something we should just have a conversation with other more mature open source teams. Just follows it, but it's a good point. I'd love to reduce as much overhead as possible here, so maybe have it as something like you say, like pin it to a specific version and then update as needed.
Yeah. So, for example, when it appears as a security alert, we will go update it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. I'll take a note that we will refer to other open source projects and see how what process they follow. Dependencies. Yeah, just taking a note. Cool. That's everything on our agenda. Anything else, anyone?
Nope.
Cool. All right. Thanks for joining. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.